You see, Bill and I was just like brothers. We was raised on Jinin Farms. He was his folks' only child, and I was my folks' only one. So natural like we growed up together, loving and sympathizing with each other. What I knowed, I told Bill. And what Bill knowed, he told me. And what neither of us knowed, why, that weren't worth knowing. If I hadn't got over my bragging days, I'd allow that in our time, Bill and I was just about the sparkingest beaus in the township. Leastwise, that's what the girls thought. But to be honest about it, there was only two of them girls we courted, Bill and I. He a courting one and I t'other. You see, we sung in the choir, and as our good luck would have it, we got sought on the soprano and the alto. And by, well, after bowing them around a spell, a year or so, for that matter, we up and married them. And the old folks give us the farms, the Jinin Farms, where we boys had lived all our lives. Lizzie, my wife, had always been powerful friendly with Marthy, Bill's wife. Them two girls never met up, but what they was a hugging and a kissing and carrying on like girls does. For women ain't like men. They can't control themselves and their feelings like the stronger sex does. I tell you, it was happy times for Lizzie and me and Marthy and Bill. Happy times on Jinin Farms. With the pastures full of fat cattle and the barns full of hay and grain and the twin cottages full of love and contentment. And then Cyrus come, our little boy, our first and only one. Why, when he come, I was just so happy and so grateful that if I hadn't been a man, I guess I'd have hollered and maybe cried with joy. Wanted to call the little tyke Bill, but Bill wouldn't hear to nothing but Cyrus. You see, he'd bought a cyclopedia the winter we was all married and had been reading in it of a great foreign warrior named Cyrus that lived a long spell ago. Land of Goshen, Bill. I says, you don't reckon that baby will be a warrior? Well, I don't know about that, says Bill. There's no telling. At any rate, Cyrus Ketchen has an uncommon sound for a name, so Cyrus it must be. And when he's 7 years old, I'll give him the finest Morgan colt in the district. So we called him Cyrus, and he grew up loving and being loved by everybody. Well, long about 2 years, or say 18 months or so after Cyrus come to us, a little girl baby come to Bill and Marthy. And of all the cunning, sweet little things you ever seen, that little girl baby was the cunningest and sweetest. Looked just like one of them foreign crockery figures you buy in the city stores, all pink and white and big brown eyes here and a teeny weeny mouth there and a nose and ears you'd have bet they was wax. They was so small and fragile. Never durst hold her for I fear I'd break her. And it like to scared me to death to see the way Marthy and Lizzie would kind of toss her around and trot her so on their knees or pat her on the back when she was colicky like women folks says all healthy babies is afore they're 3 months old. You're going to have the naming of her, says Bill to me. Yes, says Marthy, we made it up between us long ago that you should have the naming of our baby like we had the naming of yourn. Then, kind of hectoring like, for I was always a powerful tease, I says, how would Cleopatra do for a name, or Venus? Now, I have been reading the cyclopedia too, myself. I have, you know. And then I laughed one of them provoking laughs of mine. I said, oh, I tell you, I was the worst fella for hectoring folks you ever seen. But I meant it all in fun. For when I suspicioned they didn't like my funnin', I says, Bill, says I, and Marthy, there's only one name I'd love above all the rest to call your little lambkin. And that's the dearest name on earth to me, the name of Lizzie, my wife. That just suited them to a T, and always after that she was called Little Lizzie. And I saw it on her, that name did, like it was made for her. and she for it. We made it up then, perhaps more in fun than anything else, that when the children growed up, Cyrus and little Lizzie, they should get married together and have both the farms and be happy and be a blessing to us all in our old age. We made it up in fun, perhaps, but down in our hearts it was our prayer just the same. And God heard that prayer and granted it to be so. They played together, they lived together. Together they attended district school, went huckleberrying. There was huskins and spelling bees and choir meetings and skating and sliding downhill and the happy times of youth. And all those times our boy Cyrus and their little Lizzie went lovingly together. What made me ask Bill one time, are we a-getting old, Bill? That was the Thanksgiving night when, as we sat round the fire in Bill's front room, Cyrus come to us holding little Lizzie by the hand, and they asked, could they get married come next Thanksgiving time? Why, it seemed like only yesterday that they was chicks together. God, how swift the years go by when they are happy years. Reuben, says Bill to me, let's go down the cellar and draw a picture of society. You see that being men, it wasn't for us to make a show of ourselves. Marty and Lizzie, they just hugged each other and laughed and cried and was so glad. Then they hugged Cyrus and little Lizzie and talked and laughed. Didn't it beat all how women folks can talk and laugh all at one time? Cyrus laughed too, and then he said he reckoned he'd go out and throw some fodder to the steers. And Bill and I, well, we went down the cellar and drawed that picture of Sidey. It ain't for me to tell now of the mellow sweetness of their courting time. I couldn't do it if I tried. Oh, how we loved them both. Yet, once in the early summertime, our boy Cyrus come to me and said, Father, I want you to let me go away for a spell. Cyrus, my boy, go away. Yes, Father, President Lincoln has called for soldiers, Father. You have always taught me to obey the voice of duty. That voice summons me now. God in heaven, I thought you have given us this child only to take him from us. But then there came a second thought. Steady, Reuben. You're a man. Be a man. Steady, Reuben. Be a man. Your mother, says I. Your mother, it will break her heart. She leaves it all to you, Father. But Cyrus, little Lizzie, you know, she is content, says he. A storm swept through me like a cyclone. It was all Bill's fault. That warrior name, he had done it all. The cyclopedia with its lies had poisoned Bill's mind and put this trouble on me and mine. No, 1,000 times no. These was cowards' feelings, and they misbecome me. The aching here in this heart of mine had no business there. The better part of me called to me and said, pull yourself together, Reuben Ketchum, and be a man. Well, after he went away, little Lizzie was more to us than ever before, was at our house all the time, called Lizzie mother, and was contented in her woman's way, willing to do her part, waiting, watching, and praying for him to come back. They sent him boxes of good things every fortnight, mother and little Lizzie did, and there wasn't a minute of the day that they wasn't talking or thinking about him. Well, you see, I must tell it in my own way. He got killed. In the very first battle, Cyrus got killed. The rest of the soldiers turned to retreat because there was too many for him on the other side. But Cyrus stood right up. He was the warrior Bill allowed he was going to be. Our boy was the kind to run. They tell me there was bullet holes here and here and here and here, all over his chest. We always knew our boy was a hero. You can thank God you wasn't at the Jinin Farms when the news come that he'd got killed. The neighbors were there, of course, to comfort us and hold us up. And Bill and I sat all day in the woodshed, holding hands and looking away from each other, so never said a word, just sat there sympathizing and holding hands. If we'd have been women, Bill and I would have cried and beat our foreheads and hung around each other's neck like women folks done. Being we was men, we just sat there in the woodshed, away from all the rest, holding hands and sympathizing. From that time on, little Lizzie was like our daughter, our own very daughter. All that was left to us of our boy. She never shed a tear, crept like a shadow round the house, up the front walk and through the garden. Her heart was broke. You could see it in the little lambkin's eyes. You could hear it in her voice. I wanted to tell her sometimes when she kissed me and called me father. Wanted to tell her, little Lizzie, let me help you bear your load. Speak out the sorrow that's in your broken heart. Speak it out, little one, and let me help you bear the load. But it isn't for a man to have them feelings. Leastwise, it isn't for him to tell of them. So I held my peace and made no sign. She just drooped and pined and died. One morning in the spring, she was standing in the garden, and all at once she threw her arms up so and then fell on her face, and when they got to her, all that was left to us of little Lizzie was her lifeless little body. I can't tell of what happened next, of the funeral and all that. I said this was in the spring, and so it was all around us, but it was cold and winter here. One day, Mother says to me, Reuben, says she, soft like, Marthy and I is going to the burying ground for a spell. Don't you reckon it would be a good time for you to step over and see Bill while we're gone? Maybe so, Mother, says I. It was a pretty day. Cutting across lots, I thought to myself what I'd say to Bill to kind of comfort him. Made it up that I'd speak about the time we was boys together, how we used to slide down the meeting house hill and go huckleberrying, and how I jumped in the pond one day to save him from being drowned, and of the spelling school and the husking bees and the choir meetings and the sparking times, and the swimming hole, the crow's nest and the pine tree, the woodchuck hole and the old pasture lot, of the sunny summer days and snug winter nights when we was boys and happy. And then, I couldn't go on like that. I'd break down. Man can't be a man more than just so far. Why did Mother send me over to see Bill? I'd better stayed home. I felt myself choking up. If I hadn't took a chew of my Turek, I'd have probably been crying in a minute. And nearer I got to Bill's, the worse I hated to go in. Standing on the stoop, I could hear the tall clock ticking solemnly inside. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Just as plain as if I was sitting inside of it. The door was shut, yet I knew just what Bill was a-doing. He was sitting in that old red easy chair, looking down at the floor like this. Strange, ain't it, how sometimes when you love folks, you know just what they're doing without knowing anything about it. There weren't no use knocking, but I knocked 3 times, so. Didn't say a word, only just knocked 3 times that way. Didn't hear no answer, nothing but the ticking of the tall clock. And yet I knew that Bill heard me, and that down in his heart he was saying to me to come in. He never said a word, yet I knowed all the time Bill was saying for me to come in. I opened the door, careful like, and slipped in. Didn't say nothing, just opened the door soft like and slipped in. There sat Bill just like I know he was setting, lonesome like and sad like, his head hanging down. He never looked up at me, never said a word. Knowed I was there all the time, but never said a word and never made a sign. How changed Bill was. Oh, Bill, how changed he was. There was fur as all on your face, and your hair was white as mine. He looked small about the body, thin and hump-shouldered. Just two old men is what we was. And we'd been boys together. Well, I stood there a spell and kind of hesitating like, neither of us saying anything until by and by Bill, he sort of made a sign for me to sit down. Didn't speak, didn't lift his eyes from the floor, only made a sign like this in a weak and trembling way. And that was all. And I sat down, and there we both sat, neither of us saying a word, but both sitting there loving each other and sympathizing as hard as we could. For that's the way with men. By and by, we kind of hitched up closer, for when folks is in sorrow and trouble, they like to be close together. But not a word all the time, and hitching closer and closer together. Why, by and by, we sat side by side. So we sat a spell longer, loving and sympathizing as men folks do, thinking of the old times of our boyhood, thinking of the happiness, the past, and of all the hopes them two children had brought us. The tall clock ticked, and that was all the sound there was, except when Bill give a sigh, and I give a sigh too, to lighten the load. Not a word from either of us. It was all we could do to sit there, loving each other and sympathizing. All at once, for we couldn't stand it no longer, all at once we turned our faces the other way and reached out and groped with our hands this way till we found each other fast in a clasp of tender meaning. And God forgive me if I done wrong, and I wished I was a woman. For being a woman, I could have riz up and standing so, I could have cried, "Come, Bill, come, let me hold you in these arms. Come, let us weep together, and let this broken heart of mine speak through these trembling lips to that broken heart of yourn, Bill, telling ye how much I love ye and sympathize with ye." But no, I was not a woman. I was a man. And being a man, I must let my heart break. I must hold my peace. I must make no sign. Thank you for spending this time with us. Donate if you can. Community theater is a great thing. Tune in May the 21st when Jim Woods will read Edgar Allan Poe's Cask of Amontillado.